Well, good afternoon. I have the pleasure of being joined by Nairouz Bader. Welcome, Nairouz. Pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for sparing the time, and lovely to have this opportunity.
Thank you so much. So let's get to know you better. Tell us about yourself, your work experience, life, education. Let us know who you are, if you don't mind.
Sure, with pleasure. Depending when the audience will be listening, but I think to be on the safe side, and I'll use my cliche that I usually use after lunch when we are in a conference. So I always say I used to be a drug dealer, now I'm a headhunter. So speaking about education, pharmacist by profession. So this is the drug dealing aspect. I started my career long ago.
Thanks for that clarification. Yes.
No, sometimes it helps, you know. So I started my career with Hoffmann La Roche here in the region, as well as I did a little bit in Basel, Switzerland. And then after that with Glaxo. So for the people like you and I, we might remember the era of Glaxo before it became GSK. Which was a while ago, and you know, while I was in London doing actually at that time my postgraduate. So my first degree is pharmacy, and then my second degree I was doing postgraduate in London, and that was in the early 90s, and at that time or mid 90s. So at that time the leadership era was starting. So accidentally, I came to know about a new topic, a new specialty that is leadership. So I took one course and I fell in love with the subject. And I always say I found people much more interesting than molecule, and that was the start. So after that, I have moved to Vancouver, BC, where we both share such a passion, I would say. And I always, you know, my daughters were born in Toronto. My next chapter in Canada was in Toronto, but I always say I'm a little bit biased towards Vancouver. This is where I feel my heart and soul. And actually, as we speak next week, I will be flying back to see my daughter, who's now also, she's could be a colleague of yours because she's now studying at UBC. But she's finishing her psychology, and she will be starting her master's next year. So while I was in Vancouver, actually, I've been headhunted by an American company. And at that time, I knew nothing about executive search. But the more we started to talk, the more interested I have become. And then they've invited me to join them. At that time, I didn't want to leave Vancouver. So we have agreed that I will set up my own entity in Canada, and that we will collaborate. So we started with that model, and you know, started to work with the region remotely from our Canadian base, because at that time of the profession, executive search wasn't very well known in the region, and we didn't even have a wealth of talent pool here. So the right model that was serving the purpose at that time was to be closer to both stakeholders, be it our clients as well as our candidates, because as I say, we used at that time to import talents into the region, as well as decision making used to be more at headquarters, you know, but like what we know, what used to be a Dubai office became UAE office, GCC, MENA, Meta, SEMA, you know, Intercontinental, and more decision making started to happen here on ground, and that's why in 2004 we've established our office here in Dubai to service the region. As well as, you know, talent pool. So people like ourselves, actually, we're a good example where we have, we're from the region, we went abroad, got the education, the expertise, and came back to the region, or, you know, expatriate that have moved into the Middle East, and as I say, have Middle Easternized to some extent. So this mix of talent pool have become much more valuable than the old model, and we started to focus more in terms of attracting those type of talents that are already on ground, understand both ends, developing and developed market. They know how to be compliant as per international headquarters standard, but at the same time having the mindset of adaptability, agility, quick decision making, etc. So that has become really very valuable post-COVID, and also, one element that I wanted to tell you about, which is my personal and professional passion to push the female agenda at a senior level, and we've been kind of the advocate for that here in the region. And being a mother of two, it comes, by default. So. With also what happened with COVID, we have found that our clients starting to appreciate more and more talents that come from emerging markets, because what is kind of a natural survival leadership attributes for us in this part of the world has become the rescue remedy post-COVID. So the type of leadership that is required, is you want somebody who's used to risk mitigation, that comes to them naturally, that, transformation is kind of built in the DNA, etc. And we have started in the last couple of years to import talent to develop markets. So we started to send our talents, that are from all aspects, not only gender, but market background, knowledge, ethnicity, you call it, you name it, I mean. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if I have covered the question.
That's great. Absolutely. No, that fascinating what you do. Fascinating that you're in the female agenda, which should be, of course, pushed, as well as other groups, but that's excellent. And interesting that we're becoming a source for talent now. Whereas, of course, I remember the days, not that it's my industry, but I certainly remember the days where it was all imported and it was all about headquarters. And now most people are sitting here, and fascinating. That's a great trend, and interesting for me to think about. And I'm sure the audience who are listening. So, and then tell us about how you came across the Canadian Business Council and your involvement with the Canadian Business Council, your experience. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, looking back, actually, when I moved back to Dubai, I forgot to mention that I'm Syrian origin, Canadian. Have lived most of my life in Dubai. I grew up in Dubai, but then I have moved out to Europe and then Canada, the States, and came back. So when I came back to the new Dubai in 2004 at that time, I have come across, a couple of Canadian friends, and that we were discussing kind of a business community in terms of having an avenue for collaboration between the two countries, the two markets, and how people like ourselves can really connect and add value. So it was at the very early stage of starting up the Canadian Business Council when I have joined. It was really it's a nostalgia to think about it, because we were a small group. We were more like family and friends. I have to say, still we are. And, as you know, Dubai is a transient market, so people come and go. And, that connection started and lives vividly until now. I mean, even if I haven't attended, few of the meetings, when I come back, it's always refreshing and heartwarming to see somebody that you've known for 10, 15, 20 plus years, and reconnect with them. And I have to say, that connection. So I can tell you, for example, one of the interesting privilege that we had as CBC at that time, that we were the first to be taken on a tour for what was starting to become the Palm at that time.
Wow.
So I think it was maybe like a dozen people of us, and it was this very interesting, exotic thing that we have been exposed to. So that has been, my journey with the Canadian Business Council. I'm very grateful. I have to say, it's been, they're extremely supportive. What I love about it as well, that they always open to ideas and thoughts and creativities and connection and collaboration. So I have gained some very interesting contacts and accessibility within the network, and also transferred and connected, CBC with other organizations, like, for example, CEBC, and especially with my involvement with the COP28 recently. So yeah, it has really been wonderful. And I have to say, extremely grateful for the opportunity. Absolutely.
Very kind of you. And thank you. Thank you for your support of the Canadian Business Council and your involvement all these years. If you think about the Canadian Business Council and your experience with it, what are your hopes for the future for the CBC? What do you see it growing into, doing more of? What are your thoughts there for the future of the Canadian Business Council?
I mean, one is to keep on doing what we're doing, because I think it has been really effective and helpful. But the other thing, maybe to start to have some kind of thought leadership, small gathering and roundtable discussion around certain topics. So, for example, like yourself and your expertise in certain area, I think it will be great, if there would be a specific intimate roundtable discussion with those, business leaders, where we can have an avenue for interaction. Another topic, could be, I don't know how to adjust and understand any kind of new dynamics that are happening in the market. But I think that the big events, the networking events, are extremely important and essential. But having those small roundtable discussions, I think, would be of value, and will help people to open up and interact, more engaging. Let's put it this way. That's maybe what I meant to say.
I like that idea, Nairouz. I think that, interestingly, I was talking to someone else from the Canadian Business Council who was talking about something that would fit in very well to this small roundtable discussions. And with your permission, I think I may take that forward, and I'll invite you, as well as this other person. And yeah, let's get that started. I'll note that idea. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for proving me right. I like people who do that. So thanks for being a live example of what I just said, where, CBC have always been open to new ideas. And of course, if it does make sense, that they run with it. Thanks a lot for this reaction. I appreciate it.
Kind of you to say. And finally, tell us about yourself personally. What is it so you're very busy, of course, with your, of course, you've been extremely busy with your education, then your career, and you walked us through what you've done and how you end up where you are, and the work that you do in the Canadian Business Council involvement. But personally, on me time for you, what is it that you do to relax? What are your hobbies personally? Tell us about that, if you don't mind.
I don't mind, but I don't have an answer.
I didn't want to give you a difficult question. It's supposed to be an easy one.
I was going to say maybe this is one of the most difficult ones, but no, I mean, okay, walk by the beach is always therapeutic for me. And I always say, so for example, Vancouver, I have to tell you this.
Yes, it's amazing walking.
This, story. Throughout my career, like, I've had really great highlights in my life in different places over the globe. When I moved to Vancouver, I stayed for 6 months unemployed until I was able to find a job. I used mostly all my savings. I was very distant from anybody that I didn't know anybody there on ground. So it took me a while. So from a social context, from financial context, it was really rock bottom from all aspects. But I tell you, I used to live by Kitsilano Beach, and just the walk by the beach every day, no matter what, sun, rain, whatever, it was the most therapeutic. And I always say that was the happiest part of my life that I can remember, regardless of all the other, practicalities and the lack of it, but just being in that environment and connecting with nature was beyond imagination. And that's why even now my kids, they laugh at me that when we're flying in, I always say the minute we get within that environment, I feel the DNA and the blood in my veins are transforming into a positive buzz in a way. So yes, I love nature. I love reading. I'm not reading as much as I would love to because there's so much happening in our profession that you need to keep up with, you know. Every day I feel I'm just about to learn about this new trend, and then bam, there's another thing that's coming up and I'm totally ignorant about it. So the speed, maybe if I have a wish, I mean, for the world, if we can just slow down a little bit. I used to think that I'm very fast paced. People used to think I'm crazy because I always wanted to move very fast, but you know, it's really beyond my comfort zone. Let's put it this way.
Well, let's see what happens. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And we certainly feel that we know you better now. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Lovely speaking with you and looking forward to more collaboration.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you, Nairouz.
Thanks a lot.